Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have 9 o'clock.
Okay, very good. We all seem to stand and join us in the flag of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome. This is our February 28th Commissioners meeting, our regular meeting. Serving up today, we have Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Nagel, Commissioner Lockham, myself, and Commissioner Hollingsworth is absent. Also serving us, of course, is County Administrator Ewing. Is Kathy going to be joining us later as well?
Yep, she'll be here.
Okay, very good.
I think she's meeting with an employee right now.
Okay, very good. First item then on our agenda is our approval of the agenda. You all received a copy of that, and there was a copy posted as well too. Are there any additions or corrections to that, Steve?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I do have additions. Item number 2, consent agenda, we have add-on commissioners warrants in the amount of $109,790.25, 109,790.25. I also have item number 4, hospital warrants. When the agenda was prepared on Friday, I did not have the amounts from PCMC yet. I have those now, and you have a copy of the warrant register in your packet. The amount is $728,207.66. That's 728,207.66. And next item I have under Nick Bergman, Highway Engineer, like to add an agenda item to that. Set bid opening, Stone Arch Bridge. SAP 059-599-096. SAP 059-599-096 for bid opening for Stone Arch Bridge. Those are my additions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else, any other additions or corrections? Hearing none, we entertain a motion for the, actually we'll do that along with consent. You also received the consent agenda as well. We've got the approval of the minutes then from February 14th meeting. We've got those in your packet. Also the commissioner warrants that we just added on, as Steve had, $109,790.25. The hospital, the warrants then that were posted from February 17th and February 24th. And then the hospital warrants we just added up to $728,207.66.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval.
I'll support that. Okay, thank you, John. Moved in seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
And opposed, passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, first up today, then we've got Nick Bergman, Highway Engineer. We've got a road and bridge item for us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First up for me today is returning with that pickup information from last time. We did follow up with Havoc. They were unable to fully deviate in the Dodge. They have historically been very competitive and regularly are low bidder. But for whatever reason, they can't get a meeting from the manufacturer. And in following up with Dodge in Burnsville, that was kind of odd that Dodge could get one, Patrick couldn't. Dodge in Burnsville then said, no, I guess we can't get it anymore either. So it sounded like it had been out a little while from them, so we must have quoted them a couple of days before Havoc. That's what the cutoff was. I didn't get much detail on that, but either way, they weren't low bids. So that's where we're at with that. You know, if we want to proceed, I would recommend going with the bore because they're a little bid. Otherwise, you know, we can certainly we can delay and, you know, see if more people get on later. It doesn't really matter. It's not like it's not as critical as like snow plow or motor grader or something. So I'm fine either way.
I'll make a motion to purchase the board. You will pick up. Then moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Further discussion?
I've got some questions. Okay, you know, you budgeted $32,000 there.
Yep.
So you're gonna, you know, you're gonna add tax and license, which is what, another $2,500 to the 40,055.
Right.
So where does the excess come from?
It would it would be out of our reserves from some of the other equipment that it's coming in under budget.
Is that a normal, Steve, is that a normal way to
Mhm.
to make up
Yes.
the difference?
Yep. Yep, and pull it from any of his budgets to get it taken care of.
As long as it's in.
Yeah, as long as it's in there, it's in the overall budget. Yep,
Okay.
it's perfectly fine.
You won't see prices going down.
They aren't gonna go down.
That's what I was thinking.
Good point, you know, it's not like it's a momentary bump, you know, after we've gone through the supply chain and so forth, that, yeah, it's not gonna come down.
It's the new normal.
It's the new
Unfortunately,
Yeah. Okay, well, very good. Recommended by Nick, moved and seconded, any other further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for that, Nick.
Yep. If I may, just for the board's information too, when we buy a vehicle like this, we do pay 6% sales tax. It's not 6.5, but it is 6%. The only vehicles we do not have to pay sales tax on are marked squad cars, ambulances, fire trucks, that type of thing. So we do have, but it's not the state sales tax rate.
Did that change?
No, it's a long time ago, long time. State, yeah, vehicles are 6%. Yeah, vehicles are 6. Yeah, vehicles are 6 right now.
Different.
Yeah. So, and then there'll be approximately $50 for title and those type of fees that go along with it. It's not that, that's not awful much, but we do have to pay tax. So just like we did with the sheriff's pickup trucks we got a few weeks ago too. So if they don't show up on this, that'll always be an add-on that we do have to pay, just so that the board and meeting, everyone knows that we do pay taxes to the state for this when we get them licensed.
and I'll try to remember to be adding that going forward. I don't think I've ever done that. That doesn't make it right. You know, I should be putting that on the bottom. I just never thought to do that.
Taxes, right?
Yeah, that should be done.
Okay, very good. Then we'll move on to road and bridge items, and then the stone arch is separate from road and bridge items, so.
Yeah, so yesterday afternoon, I got an email from the guy who controls the bridge funds, if you will, at the state, and he said on submitting the updated plans to them, he's gonna issue a funding letter for Stone Arch Bridge. And I think that's great news.
All these years.
Yep. So there's a little catch with that, though. He's going to fund this out of an account called Special Town Bridge. And those funds historically expire at the end of the year. So I think if it's all right with the board, I would like permission to advertise as soon as we get a letter. So I can't really give you that date right now, because I don't know when we're gonna get that letter from them. But I'd like to advertise it as soon as we possibly can, so we can try and get that done by the end of the year.
So by these funds expiring, and so does the job just have to be left before that, or does that?
So as soon as it's let and under contract, we can submit a state aid pay request, so we get 95% of that money. But I don't know how it would work at the end of the year. Like if we didn't have it all requested, we might have to pay some of that out of our regular town bridge account. So I just think it'd be best if we just hurry up and try to get that thing done as fast as possible, and then hopefully just avoid that conversation with the state altogether, so.
But our share of the project is 5% right away.
No, so that 95%, sorry, is of eligible items. So this is gonna be, they're thinking over $1 million project. Well over 1 million, I don't know if I can say the exact amount that they're talking funding, but I don't know if I want to, because I don't want to accidentally hint at what people should be bidding, you know, so.
But we do right away because the labor involved. It's a big expensive project
Oh, yeah, it's,
with the historical significance.
yeah, I would have guessed, you know, when we got the estimate from the consultant, I would have never guessed it's that expensive to do that work, but they have to take the whole rail apart, stone by stone, catalog it, put it all back together.
Mr. Chairman, can you refresh my memory where when this is?
Oh, south of Island State Park, that's Stone Arch Bridge by the dam.
South of the park?
Yep.
So we weren't gonna be blocking them off again for another year.
They'll have their north access.
Yeah, they'll come in from the.
They'll have their paved way in. Yeah. So this is right where the blacktop ends. Blacktop ends on this bridge, so. So they'll be blocked again, but it'll be
By the dam.
from that direction, so then hopefully we're not bothering them for a long time.
And I guess also, that's not new with maybe briefly recap that this is one of, that this is the largest storm arch bridge in the state.
So-
to that effect.
I haven't like looked up all the stone arch bridges in the state. But I've been told that this is the largest stone arch bridge for vehicle traffic, and there might be longer, like a ped one or something, but so the largest in-service vehicle stone arch is what I was told.
So that's why it's got such historical significance, and that's why the state is so interested in
Yes.
maintaining this.
Yes, that is how I understand what, in my conversations with them. Like I said, you grill them a whole lot once you said like, yeah, we'll fund this. And that's what we're talking. So,
Now, where does? And excuse my lack of knowledge on this. What part of that road is still county road? Where does it turn into township? Is it south of there, it turns into township?
the bridge is technically on a township road.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's one of those that we maintain. It's like under our jurisdiction, but. I want to say it's just north of that bridge is where the actual cutoff is.
Between the township and county.
State aid, that is. Yeah. So,
Any other questions at all at this point? So that you're looking for us to set a bid opening date, which at this point, or you just need to have.
At this point, I prefer permission that we can just advertise as soon as we get all the information we need from for the funding, once we get their signatures and we just start advertising right away. The other option would be I can come back to the next meeting and request. I would know the exact date then. So it'd only slow us down a couple of weeks, but I just thought, well, at the beginning of. We're approaching like beginning of construction season, so I just thought it might be in our best interest to try to get bidding out right away, because from what I've been told, only a couple people in the state do this work, so I don't want them to be filled up and then we miss out.
Just
How long do you normally do the bid? How long does the bid process take?
So it's gotta go into paper for a few weeks, and then it's gotta wait for like 10 days after the last advertisement in the paper. I don't know the significance of that, that's just how it is, but it would be the same bidding requirements that we've had.
So it's a few months from when you first start advertising.
The opening would be. Depending where the days of the week land, somewhere around a month after we start advertising. Yeah, and then we would, so if we like start advertising, say the. Beginning part of March, if we'd have an opening, maybe the beginning of April. Well, let's, those guys are thinking like, oh, we need some work now. But then, so that's why I really wanted to get after it, if this was. January 1, we got this notification, we probably handle it a little bit differently, but sneaking up on the construction season like that, I would prefer to. Try to hurry up and
So like a April 11th date, maybe?
open, yes,
for the bid opening,
yeah.
but at this point, you're asking basically our authorization for you to proceed with this before we actually get the bid open sales.
So, historically, I've come to you with a date, like I said, we want to open this date.
Right.
I don't know what date that would be, because we can't advertise until we have that funding letter. So, and I don't know exactly when that's gonna come in, they just said they're gonna send us one. So, normally I would wait until I have that and we follow the normal flow line of progression, but now it's like, well. That could be the difference between the beginning of April and the end of April, and. I don't know if that would hurt us if there's only a couple people that stay to do this work, but I'd like to try to get out in front of it as best as we can.
I don't fully understand the question, because
So-
you don't need permission from us to start the process. You just need the permission to set the official date.
Yeah, I just like permission to advertise for it as soon as we can. I think that would be enough.
Sure.
Just some type of board action saying that it's approved that we advertise for this. Normally, I just have a date that you,
And you do it all the time.
Yeah.
Any other question?
I guess so then I'd make a motion that we allow him to pursue advertising whenever it works out and just come back and we'll confirm the date once we know. what it
Yeah,
is.
that'll satisfy everything.
Sounds very good. So
Thank you.
moved and seconded. Any further discussion, questions? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Passes unanimously. Well, this is good news.
This has been great news.
So,
Yeah, that's over an extra $1 million we found just from, that we got below the bridge, so that's great news. Then I'd like, one thing I want to confirm before I send out my advertisements. The road and bridge hearing, we scheduled that for March 20th,
Mhm.
9 AM at EMS, correct?
Mhm. Yes,
Okay, I confirmed with Casey that it's available that day, but
I reserved it the day we set it up too.
okay. perfect,
It's
thank
on the
you.
calendar.
Double cover.
Yep, we're double covered.
So again, that's March 20th.
Yep.
At 10.
9.
9 at the EMS building, so. It's a Monday, yeah, it's just wanted to confirm that that's what we decided on, because I know it's a little later than usual. So.
And board members, it's also on your agenda this morning under upcoming meetings.
Oh, perfect. All right, then lastly for me. We've been pretty busy plowing snow lately. We have all of our roads passable with the exception of 1 mile that nobody lives on. It's gonna take a lot of blower work. Currently, we have 2 trucks down and 2 of our 3 blowers are down, so we've been using our blower to widen out paved roads that were, kind of right up to the fog line. So we didn't really want to spend all that time opening up this road, but nobody lives in it. It's 82, just east of 16. So like,
yeah.
from like Rob Curley, south corner, west, yeah, it's a big hill, it's super deep there, so. Nobody lives on it, I understand it's important to someone, we still want to get at it, but like. It's either open that up. But if we open that up, then we have snow like past the fog line and some of the paved roads, we felt it's more important to get the paved roads a little bit better. So.
Then so people don't inadvertently try to drive down that, you actually have a barricade.
I told them to close that, but I guess I never followed up if they did. But yes, so it's, we don't want anybody to get stuck in the middle of it, but I will confirm that.
Mr. Chairman, along with that, I would just like to extend thanks and gratitude to the highway department and also the state of Minnesota with snowplow. There was a medical emergency last week during the blizzard out north and east of Woodstock, and required a state plow to help get the ambulance out to there. And Nate and his crew had 3 plows out helping them to get out to the home as well, and then also to get back to town with the patient to come in. So it was a very good working relationship with the state, county highway department, law enforcement, EMS, and dispatch to get all the required people to this medical emergency. So and it always seems to something will happen during a blizzard. So they worked well together, and it was handled very professionally.
Yeah, that. I'm very happy with the guys. They did very good work with that. It worked, the process I thought worked very well. Our radials, I think, actually were pretty slick. They were able to just all kind of get together and yeah, just very happy with our guys. A lot of white knuckle driving, but they got it taken care of. So
And with the demands of the weather, and even if you were fully down, it takes extra effort. We appreciate that, and you know, as you have our personnel report, we've been short-handed as well too. So you guys have done a great job. It's very much appreciated.
yeah, I'm really happy with the method. Excellent at that. Other than that, that's all I had for today. So anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, that's it for me.
Just comment, I talked to a couple of plow drivers, expressed my gratitude for the work we did. So good.
The equipment breakdowns, waiting on parts, or how's looking those blowers?
Snow blowers breakdown.
Yeah, I think we got clutch on a snow blower, fuel injector line on a different snow blower, and some transmission issues on a couple trucks. But I think that might be ice related for all of them wiring harnesses. So We got some guys working in the shop, like getting that stuff back up and running today, but that's, you know, a lot of that's due to not having a mechanic for how long now, so it's possible we might have to find some of that out. But that's where we're at. Like, those blowers are just super high maintenance, or that's where things are always broke. They're just rough service, so.
We're getting rusty.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, I hate seeing them out, but they're super expensive, but gotta have them. So.
So many of us old timers talk about 68, 69. I'm sure everybody's at 68, 69. Well, we didn't have blowers like that back then.
So I heard somebody stopped in last week and they made the comparison of this back to then, and yeah, well, that had to be way worse back then because of the equipment we have now, you know. And that wasn't available then, so I'm sure that was a lot worse. But
Hate to say it, but if my memory serves me correctly, we got the bulk of that snow in March, 68, 69.
Well, it was earlier than that, 'cause we didn't have church for 2 months, January and February.
No.
Yeah,
So it was right in March, so, and we got a lot. But no, thank you again, Nick. Appreciate it to make sure the guys all know that.
Yep.
They've done
so
so.
pass that. So. Right, anything else for me? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next on the agenda is Bill Folger, IT Director. Morning, Bill.
Good morning. How are you? I have a couple of things. And then standard stuff, renewal for Sophos antivirus is the first one, I guess I need to go over. Pretty standard. We've been using this product for a long time, since 2007. This is the endpoint protection that goes on all the devices that we have, servers, any Windows PCs and any Xboxes. Price has gone up considerably since our last time, about $5,000 more than it was last time we did this. Questions about it?
And there's really only one vendor that really,
I can't get anyone else to respond. So, what do you do? We've been purchasing from Kodelsky, I think the last 3 times that we, 2 or 3. As the vendor for this.
okay, thank you, Luke. Seconds. Further discussion, other than, of course, obviously, rock and hard spot, they have to have it, so. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All in favor? Aye. You go to board. Unanimously.
All right. The second item here is replacing the laptops in squad cars. So we're at 4 years. Some of the machines are showing signs of being 4 years old already. These get a lot of abuse. They're fully rugged machines. They can throw them across the room. Supposed to be able to survive. We've had a few dumps and spills with them, and they seem to still work. But this particular model had some overheating issues, and that's just starting to show more and more now. In the wintertime, not as bad, but in the summertime, they sit in the dash or up by the dash in the squads and they get a lot of heat.
I would think that in the winter too, the condensation, heat and cool cycles can't be good on. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. But for the most part, they do bring them in the house when it's really cold out, and they do bring them in the office. This is their only machine, so they can dock them in the office or dock them in the squad. We want to replace them with models that we can keep the docks that we have now. There's quite an investment in the docks. So we are buying not the latest and greatest model from Dell. We're buying a model that works with this dock, but it'll be new. I'm pretty confident that this will work and get us through for the next 4 years.
will this machine still be supported?
Oh, yeah. We'll get them all. We'll do a 3-year warranty. we replaced them at 4 years and rolled the dice on that last year. The cost of the last year is about the same as if we had to buy them one. So it's not feasible or not really worth it to buy that last year's warranty on it. Other than that, these should be solid, and the old ones, few of them are going to be scrapped right off the bat. Some of the other ones will probably just keep them around just in case, like we do with other things. That's
Mr. Chair. Just so I'm clear on, it says funds to be drawn from 2021 IT budget, that's just leftover from money left over.
this was supposed to happen in December, but they're getting the quote has been difficult. Yeah, so we've been delayed on that. That's just where we are on. Sure.
So actually, that should be 2022 then.
Oh, 2022, sorry.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve purchasing computers from Dell.
Thank you, Dallas. I will second. Further discussion, questions?
Make sure all the old ones are scrapped or whatever.
Yeah, we pull the hard drives out and crush them. There's no way in the data back.
There's no scrubbing.
No.
Destroy.
How many? Oh, 15 total.
15 total.
15. Very good. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, we are a little bit early then for our next agenda item. Is there any reason to wait? Can we move into it or should we wait?
No, we'll go personnel. Personnel,
Okay,
let's do that.
okay, very good. We'll move on to personnel then, yeah.
And then we will wait until 10 o'clock. I'd recommend that. Good morning.
Just a few items for hiring. So the last meeting, I did request approval of hiring the extension administrative support specialist and one full-time hiring inspector. I can say their names now and their start date. So Macy Holstein started last week on Tuesday, February 21st. An extension. And then Alan Coteau will be starting on Monday, March 6th as a full-time highway maintenance worker. And then we did complete interviews last week for our other highway maintenance worker position, and we do have a accepted conditional offer on step F of the pay plan, but I do need board approval of that, and then I put a short synopsis of this individual's background, and this will also be contingent on completing all the pre-employment stuff, so the physical drug test and criminal background.
Maybe I should ask Nick, but I see it says truck driver DOT inspections. Is this person going to do the DOT inspections on the trucks or?
I don't know that, I just thought it was relevant.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know if they're gonna assign that to this individual, but I just put it in there since it's relevant
That's
experience.
who usually does it.
Now, is this because he has mechanical experience as well too? Is he interested in taking that mechanic's position or he wants to be an operator?
Not at this time, but I mean, it's still open. Once he gets here, if he is interested, he would have the ability to still apply for it. He was asked that question, so.
I'd move for. Okay, very good. I'll support that. And second, then to approve making this offer, this conditional offer, then continue to go into question. Discussion. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Keep beating the bushes. Well, why don't we take 6? I don't know if you want to take a full
gonna do anything until then.
No,
No, won't be able to do anything until they get here anyway,
so
so.
I guess we'll take 20 minutes. Very
we'll
good.
go from there.
We'll meet Dan in recess. Thank you. Okay, very good. It is 9:55. We'll come out of recess and come back in the regular session here. So at this point on the agenda, I know we're starting just a couple minutes later here, but we want to discuss our hometown fiber and also our Northland securities. Trying to get an idea what it's on bounds and so forth. So at this time, then, if you would please come forward then, Marlena, and give us some information. Oh, and George, you want to do it too? Great. Yeah, George, if you want to come and talk a little too.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Okay, so. Thank you for getting us back in the room. Last time I was here, we covered the mapping services that we did for you and some of the network design, and you had some questions that frankly I just couldn't answer. So today we have Kyle Moorhead with us, CEO of Hometown Fiber. He can handle all the things that are above my pay grade.
Very good. Well, thank you, Kyle, for joining us as well too. And you have met George before from Northland Securities.
Have not had the opportunity. Nice to meet you.
Where do we start?
So my goal, you have a
Go ahead.
packet,
Mhm.
sorry, you have a packet in front of you. My goal is just to give you as much information as I possibly can before you put this vote. I want you to have a timeline. I want you to be familiar with the steps in the process. So if you look at, it looks like we have some, since last time we met, notes on here. There are a couple things that have changed and we'll talk about those. They keep changing in the industry. But if you look at the first page here, this is a summary of what we went over last time. Right, so we still have 884 addresses here. We're not meeting any sort of demand, and 2,700 plus that are meeting demand and will for the next 3 to 5 years. As I said last time, though, I'm going to go closer to 2 to 3 on that, just based off of the service that I've experienced while I've been up here. I guess you're tapping into those lines pretty hard at this point. When you vote to move this forward, next page. This is a multi-year project, right? And it's a big deal. You're aware of that. There are things that have to move simultaneously, right? So you give us the go ahead and we start talking with engineers. We start designing contracts and getting those looked at. We have to start the grant application soon. The next grants open up late summer, early fall. We don't have a definitive time on that yet. But in order to apply for the grants that we need, we're looking at about $8 million for the grants for Pipestone County. In order to have those done, we have to be mostly through the engineering phase, right? Because we have to supply them with this information. We have to have contracts with ISPs done who say that they will support the network and be on there for 5 years. You see Terry Nelson's in the room today. So that's a good show of support. Seeing through this timeline here, realistically, without luck on our side and without pushing anything, we're looking at a spring 2024 construction start. Right, wrapping up 27. Okay, and we'll get that laid out as we go. In the packet as well, I brought proposals for you to look over. So put this to vote, look over the proposals. The first one is for technical representation. So I want you to think about this as sort of like a retainer fee, right? You say yes, and then all of the numbers guys and all of the engineers start doing their work. But we have to be contracted with you in order to start coordinating this and coordinating with the ISPs. So that's what that part portion is. That's 29.9. Go back a page. Sorry for the February 2023 next steps. The county resolution to move forward with Hometown Fiber as technical representatives for funding work and grant writing. And then we will begin to finalize technical materials needed to support the county's financing and legal advisors, for bond sales and or other funding. Identify broadband grant programs and prepare grant application, including working with the county to survey residents and businesses. The survey is a big portion of this. We'll be involved in that. The good news is, when we're looking at $8 million with grants, the current structure is set up so that the max amount we can award at a time right now is $5 million. Right, so we would be looking at 2 different sessions there, 2 different grants that we're going after. And they just introduced into the Senate a bill that would increase that from 5 to 10. So that could shorten the timeline. But if you go through these steps with the network architecture, the bid specifications, rewarding of bid awards, you'll see sort of a 1 through 10 here on how the process works. But I do know that you had some questions. You watched Justice's presentation. Justice has been went deep into this. Huge component for it. And so I'd like to open the floor just for conversation and questions.
And if I could, maybe just a clarification for anybody that is just new to this concept, if you weren't involved in a previous discussion that you watching. Could you give us just kind of like, you know, a 5 mile view of it? So what's the project? Like, we're thinking year 2027.
Yep.
What is the long-term plan at that point? Who owns the system at year 2027?
In 2027, so last time that we were here, we decided that you don't want to go into the internet business, right? Which is good. Counties have tried that and it hasn't gone well. So in order to bond for it, the county has to own it. Right? But you don't want to maintain it. You don't want to run the network. You lease it back to us for a nominal fee. And we handle that part.
And in comparing with what the city of Wilmer has done, so that you mentioned that judges made a proposal there. Do I understand now, Wilmer's is set up a little bit differently? Can you explain the nuances between that setup and this proposal setup?
Wilmer wouldn't be set up any differently. So Wilmer was in a situation like the city of Pipestone. Right, where they have internet that kind of works enough-ish, but not really.
So it's not classified as unserved.
It's not classified as unserved, and he didn't want to run it into the red. Right, before they did anything about it.
But the bulk of the area that we're talking about here is unserved area. Correct.
The first phase of
The first phase, yeah, and then as you go further into it, we'll give you those currently served areas as well too. And that's why we've got Terry Nelson here as well too, with that telephone. Because that's a currently served area, so we have to see how that all melts together as well.
We're not going to duplicate where there's fiber now, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense for anyone.
Right, so where Terry has fiber and where they're serving, we're not planning on building.
Now in Wilmer's case, I understand that the city of Wilmer actually takes annual revenue from the system, is that correct? Is that what we're proposing here to talk about a nominal fee for these unit operators? So how does that work?
So the fee, think $1, right? And that's not something that we're gonna charge you. I know what you're talking about is the revenue stream. Right, from the take rate off of the operating network. And the fees there.
Because in essence, and excuse me for interrupting, could this be considered like a franchise? Is that not the correct term to use? Because I think about telephone and utility franchises.
Yeah.
Franchise.
It would be similar to that in part of in fact, we line item, one of the items here is a franchise fee that's paid back.
Yeah.
That's an additional fee that you guys can negotiate, work with the franchise with us on. But we have to make sure that the network is healthy enough to pay back the revenue bonds or the bonds, however they're structured. So that's our first priority. And then secondly would be addressing the franchise fees.
you know, obviously, I can't speak for the entire group here, but I don't believe it's our intention for this to be a moneymaker for the company Pipestone. Our concern is getting our constituents served with the basic necessities that they need to operate in rural areas.
Right.
So, yes, if there's revenue that can be gleaned from that for the county, that's fine. But for us to assess a franchise fee that says pass right straight to customer, that's not what we're looking. We don't want to have another form of our taxpayers having to pay the county. We want them to have service we need.
Ultimately, that's how it ends up, right?
So, and my speaking out, sure, you guys feel the same way. Well,
I don't think you have to make that decision now,
right.
but as we go through the process, that will be one of the items that we need to work on.
But that's where my question comes from. 2027, who owns the system?
So we want the county and the government entities that we work with to own these systems. Because companies come and go, people come and go. Government and the infrastructure is good to have.
But obviously with that ownership also comes the responsibility of maintaining it.
That's where we come in, or companies like us.
You guys, any questions?
I'd like a little more clarity on how the revenue stream is gonna pay the bonds.
Well, we put together the estimated take rates and what we think that year on, year two, through.
So, okay, and so take rates are how many people, if you build this network, right? What percentage of your population is gonna run on it?
Do you know what that cost per resident will be?
We have a pretty good idea. It hasn't been finalized, but it's well above what you'll need to pay back the revenue bond.
But I mean, is it at a level that people will see as affordable and they'll want?
Yes,
Are
Yeah,
you willing,
so-
are you able to share what that
it breaks down into
approximate
different,
number is?
I can, it breaks down into different categories. You have a certain percentage of your population that is below the poverty line and would qualify for FCC support in the affordable program. They have a program for affordable connections. And they will reimburse about $30. So really you're sitting with those clients at about $30 of those that want to join us. Then you move on to your median household folks, which is in that 48,000 range. And we know that they're going to buy maybe a little bit more than a base package, but no greater than $75. In the market research, you can have huge median incomes. Your take rates dive off after $75. Now, this is for the connectivity charge, right? The broadband service. There's other services that are on top of this, like video services, phone, VoIP services for phone, and other apps or app sales and other ad revenues. All of those things factor into this in a minor way. But right now, it's mainly the connectivity charges that it's gonna, pay for us.
So there will be different plans offered, right, and that they get to pick their.
You tell us any past hookup rates? What percentage of people that are going by and hook up to it?
So they work, the people who are doing the bonding work on this, right? This is where they really dive into these numbers. Because they have to make sure that these bonds or that this network operating system are gonna pay back these bonds. The woman that we are currently working with, US has been doing this for 15 years, so Laura Lewis, out of Salt Lake City, Utah. She was kind of a pioneer in this. And the way that she structured these, like I said, she's been doing this for 15 years and she has never had a network system fail to pay back. Not once. Right, but again, those aren't her numbers.
I have some specifics that might answer your question. 78.5% to be exact of the occupied homes will buy wireline service. That's the average. You have a few unoccupied properties in your communities, but it's not a significant amount. So with that, then we are looking at, and this is where Laura comes into, is that the actual take rates per demographic are going to vary and they need to be crunched pretty pretty hard to get to the right number. We have quite a bit of wiggle room in our numbers here that we're proposing, so we're not expecting to have any surprises that would push us out of this working. But we have to go through the next step to get those answers definitively.
Going by a house in town and not having them hook up is not as costly as going past a rural place and not having hook up because of the mileage of that.
That's true.
Is there some way to judge interest in that? Is there something we can do to judge the interest in
So
people in the county?
one of the first things we do is a countywide survey. Right, I mean, if this is moving forward, what's your interest level? Do you want the fiber run to your house? Right, and that all has to be done to show interest for the grants.
And that survey would have to have some dollars a month. Because I've talked to some
Yeah.
people, and the first thing they ask, I'm just spend up.
Well, that's always the
That's all
first
they get.
question, right? And then people think that they're getting something shiny new and it's gonna cost too much. Right, and that's an anxiety point, but
Do you have different price points for different downloadability?
Yeah,
50 or 100.
yes.
So if there's in my district, we have a seed business out in the country, and I'm sure they would be very interested in a higher.
Right. And we have business class service too, that's a little bit different than the residential packages. But, you know, they're all tiered in a way that we're gonna try to find that buyer in those rates.
And it would be helpful for me anyway, to judge some of that interest, you know, like you say, survey. It's really not the best way to do government, but it's,
I know it's, you know, it can be nerve wracking, right? Because it's a new thing.
it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Now here's your soft landing on that. Okay. Throughout this process, you have many decision points. Okay, and as we go forward and we supply this information, for the most part, you own that information. Right, so you vote to move forward with this, right? 29.9, we start negotiating with ISPs and crunching numbers and talking to bond reps. Right, and then we have another decision to make. Can we move forward again? Right, then when we have that information. So it's sort of like a you are here map. Right, and then there's multiple stops along the way. So if at any point you go, whoa. Right. Then,
And it's also a chance for us to say, we found something here that was unexpected. We don't think we can make this work. And we'll, you know, because we don't want to do anything that's going to hurt us either. And so it has to work for all parties. And that's really where we're at, is to get into that deep dive.
One of the expected things in Pipestone County is you can't always vary at the depth you like.
Right.
You have some ledge rock things that.
so,
I do, yeah, when we see stone in the name of the county, I know where to rock.
It's a hint.
yeah.
There's a little, we did do the geological study. It was very brief. But I looked at percentages of bedrock and percentages of topsoil and things like that. The University of Minnesota has a lot of resources, and the state has resources on that. It's pretty well done, actually. So we do have in those numbers some consideration for the bedrock or the alternate routes. But so they're in the numbers now. The thing about the numbers that we have now is that with all the money coming from the federal government, the telecommunication industry's inflation rates are shooting up at a pretty significant rate for goods, not for labor. Labor's right on course with the average inflation rate of about 4%. But the goods have been astronomical. And one of the things when we go through the bidding process that we would do is, you know, bid out a lot of these goods well ahead of time. So we have an opportunity for those manufacturers to even give us a bid and then give us a delivery date that's always.
When you're thinking about the setup of, you know, there are two separate things here, right? You're building infrastructure. Right, and then you're talking about the affordability for the people. Right, and we have those conversations with the ISPs, right, again, Terry's in the room. And what they're gonna offer, but for your residents, this doesn't look much different than when they go online and they go to Frontier's page and the packages that Frontier offers. Right, how much that is per month. What kind of service they're gonna get, what's the speed they get for that service,
Or Woodstock.
or Woodstock. Right,
We want to be fair to our local provider too.
to Woodstock,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, and how about who services Pipestone? Is it MediaCom or is it
There's actually two different providers. There's
two different providers?
Yeah.
Blue Peak and MediaCom and CenturyLink and
But those aren't actually fiber to every house. So under your scenario, those are underserved. So that would be an area that you would target to put fiber to every house in the city limits. So
Everybody that wants it.
Yep.
It's an opt-in
Mhm.
program. The other thing is that those networks that are existing will be invited to participate. On the
at
network.
this time, if I may, I'd like to ask Terry if he would like to come forward as well too. And you're gonna stand for a long time. He's got lots of questions.
You can say that. That's fine.
Terry Nelson's from Woodstock, California.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I do have some concerns and I have expressed them with hometown fiber as well. And I have with you guys a little bit too. One of my concerns is situation like this. We haven't been involved with anything like this in the past. I'm letting go of control basically, and I don't like that. I'm using someone else's network to get to the customer, and yet it's my customer. So I'm relying on somebody else, not saying that they do a bad job. That's not at all what I mean. It's, we have a level of service that we expect, our customers expect, and when I'm relying on someone else to fulfill that for me, it makes me nervous. It's my reputation. So that's one concern I have.
And Terry, if you could talk a little bit about how you got to where you are today. Go back a number of years ago when the county did help sponsor, not sponsor, but we helped facilitate a grant for you.
Right.
So that's kind of where you got into the high-speed fiber out in the country.
Yeah, out in the country, in the Pipestone County, I mean, we have our areas of, Woodstock, Rutan, Holland. That's all been fiber to the home since 2010, 2007, 2010. We finished it in 3 to 4 years.
Mhm.
After that, we did a small project in Pipestone Rural County where we're doing some line of sight wireless. And that was part of a state grant through the state of Minnesota, the border to border grant. And we sell wireless just as it is. It's a solution if you can get it. It can't serve everybody, but it was more of an intermediate solution to get to eventually a fiber solution. So that's kind of how we got started in some of the areas around Pipestone.
And currently you serve like a third of the county kind of, and then.
Probably a third of the county is fiber to the home. The rest of the county we cover with some of our wireless. Some areas we can't hit with wireless. There's a lot more variables with wireless than there is with fiber.
And then the towns and villages that you serve them.
Yes, like the Woodstock sounds, yes, we serve the town and the rural with fiber to the home.
Yep.
In all those areas.
And you also serve Edgerton as well.
Yep, we just built Edgerton this last summer, the town, fiber to the home, and we're just in the process of hooking that up right now for the customers.
And again, this has been a multi-year thing. It's been growing this.
Yeah, every year we do some expanding. 2 years ago, we did Tyler. We've done Westbrook, Ballatin, Chandler, Lynn. So we try to expand some every year. This coming summer, Slayton is being built. We got a grant to build half of Slayton and some rural around there as part of it's called the Community Development Block Grant under the Trump administration. So we got a grant to build part of that out. So that'll get done this summer. We just also received a border to border grant through the state of Minnesota to overbuild Lake Sarah Township, which is all of Lake Sarah.
and the western side of Lake Chetak. So they will all get fiber to the home. We'll try to get started this summer, late summer on it, probably next spring.
And forgetting a very, very basic question is who owns Woodstock Telephone? Is that investor owned? Is that?
No,
family?
Woodstock it's still privately owned. It's a family, Knuth family from Slayton that owns it. It started with Bernie Knuth in the town of Woodstock, which would be my grandfather. But that's where it started. That's why it still has the name of Woodstock Telephone, Woodstock Communications. It's back in the 40s, that's when it was started, where it was started. So.
And talking about the 40s, that's when we didn't have telephone in the rural area as well.
Right, exactly.
And
Yeah,
same thing, density of hookups was just there, so a lot of companies just could not afford to bring it out because there wasn't enough use of it.
right, exactly. Yeah,
So that's where Woodstock Telephone evolved. It formed and served its need there in Woodstock, and since it's evolved,
Yes.
it's grown out.
yeah. They started with some RUS grants, not grants, but loans, very low interest loans to RUS, and that's kind of how we built out. And, you know, like I say, we completed we call them our ILEC. That's our traditional telephone exchanges that we had. We had 5 towns: Woodstock, Holland, Rupton, Garvin, and Russell. And we completed them all fiber to the home in 2010 was the end of it. So we've been fiber to the home since that time. So we're very experienced in fiber. So one of the other things I wanted to mention was just the cost of the whole project. We had a project, Slayton, which is half the town and a few miles around Slayton. And we just got bids back for that. And our bid comes to somewhere around $7,500 per passing, which is a major increase from what things have been in the last couple of years. But you know, just to give you guys some numbers, that's where some of the new bids are coming in at. So that does increase costs by a fair amount. I don't know if they'll stay there. This is a government job also, to where it's all union labor rates.
Prevailing wage.
Yeah, prevailing wage, Davis Bacon, whatever you want to call it. Anytime you deal with federal dollars, that's included. So that adds about 25% of the labor on top of it.
Could you explain some of the incentives that you give them to entering people to hook up,
Yeah, so
to try and get them to hook up?
yeah, we try multiple things, you know, and maybe a little tougher than some of the other towns, you know.
Value their dollars.
That value their dollars, we'll say that, yeah. So we've done a number of things. I mean, we start with 3 months. We start with I don't know, we've even done, you know, road crews and things like that. We've also done a lot of community things to where for every customer that signs up, we donate to the school of their choice. We donate $25 per customer that signs up to the school of choice. That's went over well in Edgerton, especially because there's always been a little headbutting between schools. So we don't want to favor one school over the other. So that's gone over well. We do a lot with the communities as far as, you know, any kids that come in looking for school sponsorships and whatever it is, you know, we're very involved with that stuff. I don't know if we've ever turned a kid down or somebody coming down, turned somebody down asking for a donation. So, you know, we try to be very involved in the communities, very involved in the schools. In Rupton a few years ago, we put up a new scoreboard for the baseball team to build a new baseball field there. We sponsored the scoreboard, we get our name on it, yes, but we paid for the whole thing. Same thing's gonna happen this year down in Edgerton, softball fields. We bought a new scoreboard for the softball fields down there. And that's bothered me for years. My daughters have played softball down there. We have one of the, between us and Pipestone, we have the 2 premier softball programs darn near in the state. And we didn't have a scoreboard that works. So we have purchased a new scoreboard for the softball fields down in Edgerton, and that'll look this way. So we do a lot of things like that to, you know, try to bring in customers. We really promote the local service. We live in the communities. We, you know, we care.
Can you share the hookup numbers?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to tell yet, but there's around 600 homes in town. We did vary a drop to around 500, 550 of the homes that
say they wanted service. To get them to actually pay is different than them saying yes. Today, we're probably, we're just a month into it, and we have around 150 hooked up as of today. So we're doing 3 to 4 a day customer turnout. So we're hoping to hit, our initial push of around 50%.
Hmm.
That's kind of what we shoot for right away. By the end of year 3, we try to get in a town like that where there's other providers, you'd have a little more competition, but we're hoping to hit the 70% in about 3 years in town.
Wow, that's a really impressive take rate, so we don't have them in here at all.
Well, that's our hope. So that's what we shoot for. Some of the other towns, like in the Tyler, we're going on our 3rd year. In Tyler, they don't have, Blue Peak, which is maybe a little better provider than the ones that are in Tyler. It's Frontier. I hate putting companies down, but Frontier and MediaCom, they're on the lower end of providers around here. And, we're 65 to 70% there. Take rate. So yeah, I guess, those are probably my main concerns. The cost is the one, just so everyone's aware that costs are not going down. They have gone up a lot. This project we're looking at for Slayton main line alone, just in town was about 1.8 million when we did our initial study for the grants. That portion is up to 3.2 just for the main line. So costs are increasing dramatically.
Terry, how many years has it been that you've done really in the fiber business? So when did you first start putting in rural fiber?
Our very first fiber was put in the late 80s. Just that was more connecting our towns together.
Yep.
That way we had a voice switch in every town. And that got to be too expensive because, buying upgrades all the time, buying new equipment. So we ended up putting one switch in our main office at Rutland, buried fiber to each town. So we had one switch that way. So yeah, we've had fiber since then. As far as, when we started burying it to our rural residents, our first project was in 2004, when we did part of Rutland, part of Holland. And then we started I think 2007, where we did an exchange a year. 2010 was the end of it. So we've been fiber in our ILEC areas since then. And every year we've been expanding.
And again, our ultimate goal is obviously for every resident in the town to have access to it, and that's why we're discussing this. Is it realistic to think that given enough time as you build your system out, that you could accomplish that yourself as your current business plan?
Yeah. I mean, it is the problem with, the problem is the rural. Pipestone is a doable project just because you have some potentials there. The rural is where it's tough. I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 per passing in the rural areas. And you know as well as I do, at $50 a month, that it doesn't work.
And the number of potential customers in that area, the per mile customer rate is.
The only way to make it work is with grants. And with some of the BEAD programs coming out, we're still waiting on some of the rules of that. That's a federal program that's coming out. Minnesota has their border-to-border grant. And we've used that. I think we've had 4 approved grants through that now. So, I mean, we are very familiar with it. I'm on the state board for the Minnesota Telephone Association. So I'm very involved with the state grants. And that has limitations too. Like they said, it's $5 million capped right now. There is a new portion that's a middle mile that's, they're talking up and that to 10. We'll see how that goes this year, if that's going to be expanded. But yeah, there's rules with that too. The town of Pipestone, of course, you cannot get grants for that.
Because it's already
served.
even though we know it's underserved.
Even though, well, they go by speed. If it's 100 meg, even if the provider claims they give 100 meg and they don't, it doesn't matter. It's still considered served.
So the town of Pipestone is not eligible for grants right now. The rural, that's always a question too. We've applied for grants. I'm sure you guys have too, that have not, come. So it just, there's a lot of variables in grants. Pipestone Rural, with this new BEAD program, there is a possibility that some of the wireless providers, not us, I would never stop a grant with, wireless, but if they offer a licensed wireless service, like Midco does right now, they receive some CAF $2, which is another government program that can throw a wrench in grants. That's a possibility also.
And this is what brings us to where we're at today.
Yep.
This need to get service to all of our residents in the county, and that's where Hometown Fiber, they come and they said that they've got this program that they can get fiber to every residence for us. So that's kind of where we're at in the sixth process here. Well, how do we move forward to best accomplish the goal, but still also keep in mind the fiscal responsibility that we've got as well too.
Yep. And, a couple of other my concerns, one, when I talked about control, I don't have necessarily control of what I can charge customers. I don't have controls of what I can offer customers, so there's just things like that that concern me. When they're my customers and it's my cable and my marketing, all that, I can control that a little more.
Mr. Chair, yeah, this is exactly where we're at in the process. So what we'd like to do is have you approve this proposal so that we can represent you in negotiating with the ISPs, because those concerns are legitimate, but that's all doable in our technical system. We just have to make sure it's going to work economically for the ISPs and it's going to work economically for you. And that's what we want to do next. Yeah.
Just so I'm clear, so the customer, does Hometown bill the customer?
No.
So does, if Woodstock's, they would bill the customer?
Yeah.
But then you said you have no control over the amount of billing.
Well, partly because I don't know the agreements on what a lease is gonna cost me. There's a lot of that.
Right now, you know.
Yeah, today, right, we haven't discussed any agreements, we haven't discussed anything like that. It's just been more, would you be open to looking at it? And yeah, I mean, my ideal situation wouldn't be this. I would rather own my own network, that type of thing. But if the county decides they want to move forward with a project like this, I want to be the one to work with. I don't want to let someone else in here.
So it wasn't lost on us last time I was here that you really like Woodstock Communications and what they've done for you and their level of customer service.
But part of, you bill that, but then part of that bill goes back to the county to pay the bond, correct? Is that how you? So there's just a percentage added to the bill, basically.
And as far as the maintenance and stuff, that's all, service level agreement, legal language that we can negotiate, what the comfort level with Woodstock would be, because their concerns are going to be exactly the same concerns as any other ISP that would want to run on the network. So we welcome the discussion, and that's where we're at in the process. That's where you are at.
Who answers the phone when it does work?
That's right. Well, they'll call you. Yeah.
That's what he's concerned.
Yeah, they'll call you.
See the timeline a little bit, Terry, about how long it takes in Edgerton, you started.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we've been looking at it for 3-4 years. We've done financial studies and studies on top of studies. But from when we started, the actual design, easements, permitting is going to be a nightmare in Pipestone County. It just is, all the historical stuff here. Yeah, I mean, we probably started a year and a half ago to 2 years ago with, design and permitting. This last spring, we put the plows in the ground.
And explain a little bit about that. You plowed a pipe first, correct?
Yeah, we through town, pretty much everything is directional board. with conduit, and then we come back after, we'll just pull fiber through.
Duct system.
Yeah, duct system, that way it's, it's protected a little bit better. Plus, we don't tear up the town near as bad as if you come in with trenchers and big backhoes and, so there's very little actually backhoe work that's done in towns, other than where you actually need a pedestal or a vault or something.
But it's different crews and it all takes different time.
Yeah, it's a, for us to do the town, a 1.5-year process, and we're just up with customers on that.
And you can't just hook up first one when you get pipe.
Well, yeah, we choose not to, we have a few that we maybe should do, through the process, but manpower is one of our things, because the same people that are hooking them up in the winter, they're the ones burying the cables all summer long, so. We don't want to turn up, this block of town, but not this block of town. It's a marketing nightmare, so.
Back to the concept where you don't want to have duplicated services. So if both of you help me a little bit of history, deregulation of telephone system 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Because back at that point, Ma Bell owned the hardwire to you, and that was it. You had to get through them. So then deregulation, that was broken up where anybody could use that infrastructure to get to you. So that's where you have these other different phone companies all of a sudden pop up and say, you're now our customer with the supply, but we're using this existing line. So that's kind of, and I'm trying to get this in focus here. So this is kind of the same thing. We would own the fiber. So then the other various providers out there then would come to us then to work on a contract to be able to provide service to that homeowner through our fiber.
Correct.
Okay.
The other thing that happens on the technical side is that the more ISPs that connect into your network, the stronger the overall network gets for everybody. So bandwidth can be brought
Because
in,
of the competition and because of the availability.
and the bandwidth that
And the
is brought in.
Okay.
So it helps in many ways.
Yeah.
But when you already have an established ISP like Woodstock, who goes back generations, has done great customer service, it's an ideal scenario to begin. Because a lot of the hurdles in some of the communities we're working with is there isn't the Woodstock there. No. So now what do we do? And that's
because the
another
commitment
challenge.
made in 1940 to start with telephones.
Right.
Right.
So, I mean, you guys are already if we can broker a deal, with this situation, you guys are way ahead of a lot of the challenges that are normal there. So,
If we move forward in the hometown fiber, so we'd have that in 2/3 of the county with Woodstock in 1/3 of the county. So then would they be required to open up their fiber to
No.
other
No.
competitors?
We are private.
no,
Someone has
They
to
own
come in
that
and
with their
overbuild,
lines.
overbuild us.
we don't want to overbuild. I mean,
No.
50,000.
Yeah, it wouldn't make that
No.
$10 on someone that
No.
already has fiber.
Right.
But it does make sense to connect into their network.
Yes.
They have theirs and then they can use the public network.
And then as we get the fiber built in the remainder of the 2/3 of the county, then if there's a customer out there that chooses to have Woodstock as their provider, then they would use that fiber to get to them.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of subscribers that they may not be able to get to in maybe the next 5 to 10 years or longer. I don't know what your plans are. I shouldn't speak for you.
Earlier, we talked about maintaining the system. So in a case like that, then if one of the other providers had a customer out in Grange Township and there was a break in the line, okay, who's responsible to get that repaired?
Well, the logical thing for a customer to do is to call the provider and say, hey, it's an outage.
Yep.
So it would land on the provider first.
And he's going to check his
Yeah.
signal strength.
If he can't see his modems and all that, he knows it's a cut right away.
Yep, it's not on his side.
And then it's on us. Now, there's money that is in the budget for network operations. And that money can be used to have us come out and repair, or even hire other technicians that they may have in-house or want to use, or any number of ways to get that done. The key to it is the rapid restoration and meeting the service
That was
level.
my next point. Who's responsible? Because
Yeah.
we need to maintain
Yeah.
reliability service.
Yeah.
So So the customer's gonna say, oh, well, it's Woodstock, because that's who I pay my bill to.
Yeah,
Mhm.
unfortunately, Terry, I think that was part of your concern, that, yep, if that does happen,
Right.
it's kind of on you because you're sending the bid.
Yeah, it's-
And then if
I'm the
it's
same.
like a week and nobody's done anything, they're still after you.
Right.
Um,
Yep, and like I say, I'm not saying that they wouldn't fix it in a timely manner, that's not my point at all, it's just. When it's me, it's my customer, I like control over, I have techs that drive through this town every day, so I mean, we. We have a level of service that I have a level of service that I expect my employees to do. Our customers have that same level of expectations from us. And I don't want to, hurt my reputation.
And because of that, that's something that we work out in negotiations too, right? So, I mean, Terry has trucks here and he can splice fiber. Right, so if there's a break, something like that, then perhaps contractually, he's the one that we call. Right?
So that could be part of the contract.
Yeah. And that's
Timelines
between
for
contractors
repairs.
Yeah,
and
there,
staff.
there is a pretty decent advantage to be the first one, the first ISP to join on the network, right? I mean, because there'll be influence over the architecture of the network, there'll be influences on a lot of things as we work with them to tie in and get this together. So I'm pretty excited about even the expression of interest, let alone coming to the meeting and sharing his concerns and everything, so.
Hate to trouble the waters, but we're talking just internet, correct? Just the cable.
Oh, yeah, just the fiber
Just
optic cable
fiber optic cable.
and the conduit.
And how about the content that's going over? Dish TV, things like that. I know the young kids just have internet and they get Hulu and everything off the internet. But old guys like me like cable TV. I like to watch Twins. You can't find Twins on just internet. Is that something that you offer?
Yeah, a little bit, we do, we work with DirecTV, the streaming package. So, yeah, I mean,
Would that be available through the whole county then also?
yeah, and anywhere there you can get internet, you can get this type of,
Push that through?
yeah, so basically we sell a pipe to the customer. That's kind of the way we looked at it. We sell a pipe, they go get what they want over it. We'll sell them internet, we'll sell them phone, anything else, they go find. But we do work with DirecTV, their streaming package. For some of the customers, typically, I'm not pointing finger at you, but typically it's the elderly ones that want, the traditional clicker, channel up, channel down, and that is something that can be provided to us.
My brother, who is 3 years older than I am, hooked up to just internet, and canceled everything else.
Yeah.
And he can make it work, but he's tech savvy and TV is not even computer. He's got it running through the 3 little wires that used to. But it can be done just with internet.
Yeah, so there are different programs for that too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's Hulu Live, there's YouTube TV, there's Dish Network, there's.
The
And then it-
technology continues to evolve.
It
Yeah.
does, but I think and I don't know your level there, this is, this is kind of off topic, but you'll find it works just like a cable TV, you have a menu to scroll through, twins are on there. Twins are on there. They're in Iowa?
I guess one other question I have is, it was mentioned earlier, is the ownership, that type of thing. I don't like the idea of paying leases for the rest of my life. What are the options, or what are your guys' plans with ownership? Are you gonna own it forever? How does that work?
Good question.
I would recommend that the county treat it like a roadway. Now you can adjust once the revenue bond's paid off. Right, once the debt's out of there, you can adjust the rates down. So that they can continue to make money at a greater pace, but that'll be up to you guys later.
I guess to
I remember said, if it talking about, better to have government ownership because companies come and go. I mean, you've been here,
Maybe
been
not
here a
this-
long time.
Well, yeah.
I'm not saying you're going, but, that's true. The government's probably gonna be here forever and owning the system. So sure, who's taking care of it?
So we'll give a legal opinion.
No.
No.
Thank you for your honesty. You know, with my company, my board members look at a project like this, they get concerned because there is no eventually ownership and there's no return on our investment. You know, that's, we like the appreciation, but eventually owning it to where we can, you know, that's where we make a profit is once the project is paid for. When there's a continual lease and very small margin at the end, which we don't know what that will be. It's less inviting. I guess and say that.
You have to put that up against though, having customers at all. right?
Yep.
George has got a question.
Chair, George Eilertson from Northland Securities. For those of you on the board, I guess I've been in front of you multiple times, but we've done the public finance work for the county. And I, in the room, I might be the least knowledgeable about the technical side and what we're talking about today. But when you talk about, I'm familiar with what other counties have done with projects and some neighbors here as well of Pipestone County, where the counties have issued bonds, but they haven't owned the project. And I know I might get some terminology wrong here, but the provider, like the county has issued bonds on behalf of a cooperative or a provider. The county, it's a privately owned system in the county's right of way. It's basically how, and I work with the attorneys that provide the legal opinion on can you issue debt. So I was, and I may not be aware of all the projects certainly that have happened in Minnesota. I know like city of Wyndham owns and operates their own. I don't know if that's a long list or not.
They're one of the few that actually succeeded in becoming an ISP. Was WyndhamNet. So they've got an example there of them owning the whole thing, like they became Woodstock. That's not what we're talking
Then
about.
we're back to electrification.
Yeah.
Back in the 20s, the same kind of thing, you had municipal utilities.
And so I think what you're talking about maybe is an industrial revenue bond. Is that
Well,
the term?
In Minnesota, at least probably going back about a decade, a number of Minnesota counties have done used a tool that's general obligation tax abatement bonds, and I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yep.
It's an economic development tool typically, but it can also be used for projects like this. And it's one where they are general obligation bonds. Typically, they're done taxable because it's in partnership with a private entity, and there's a loan agreement between the issuer of the debt, the county, and the provider of the project, the cooperative. And again, if I'm a little maybe not speaking directly to this project, but that's how it's been done in Minnesota for probably the last decade. Those of us here are very familiar with the city of Monticello, and they issued revenue bonds. Straight revenue bonds like you might see without a taxpayer pledge. And that had problems that kind of made it. Yeah.
It didn't have problems, it failed.
Yeah, it failed.
Lake County's another one.
Yeah.
Exactly. Where it made it challenging to do a project like this without taxpayer support. And again, there may be avenues that Hometown Fiber is talking about or is familiar with that may be different than what I'm talking about. But again, typically we see Minnesota counties in the last decade that have done these kind of projects. Lincoln County, Nobles County, Big Stone, Swift, they've all kind of done it where the county issues the debt, but then what protects the county? And I know that if I'm sitting in your chair, I would have these same questions like, okay, I'm putting my general obligation out there. what you do for Lincoln Pipestone Rural Water. So I'll draw kind of a little bit of an analogy here where you do general obligation debt for the rural water system, but they've got a methodology through rates and special assessments to pay back the debt. In the county projects that I'm referring to, the county issues the debt, there's a loan agreement with the provider. And then that might have additional security beyond the loan agreement. Because if there's ever a shortfall, as you know, you're obligated to levy taxes and you don't want to do it. But so Chair, I just wanted to step in a little bit and I hope I didn't raise too many questions, or speak out of turn here. But that's what I've been familiar with for the last, say, decade, and I'm sure you're aware of those projects. So.
Could I expound a little bit? Kyle, you brought up the analogy of a road. I like that road analogy. And let's take it another step further. I know in this area we don't, but you go out east, there's a lot of toll roads out there. Okay, who built that road in the first place? The taxpayer did. And at some point, that government entity decided, well, we can make some quick money here. My perception, by selling this or leasing this to a private company, they charge a toll on it. We make money off. Again, who maintains it? Who owns it? So are there parallels between that, what we're talking about here? We're talking about the pipe as a road.
See, I think that's when you get past the obligation or the debt, once it's paid off. That's when you'll have choices as a county to say, we're not gonna charge lease fees to the ISPs because it's paid for its infrastructure, we're just gonna maintain it now. And so that will drop the rates down significantly, and they can either make more money or they can lower their rates or any number of things. But just first have to get past the hurdle of paying it, paying it down.
So are there any projects that have done revenue bonds that have been successful?
Well, try and if you're aware of any, Wyndham is the one that I'm aware of. They did telecommunications revenue bonds. They have an annual appropriation pledge to those bonds, which is kind of like you're a little bit pregnant. Meaning that if there's a shortfall, the governing body can elect to levy taxes. That's the only one I'm aware of, I guess, in Minnesota.
I think you're probably right about that too. I don't know if you consider like that. But maybe you can speak to more.
In Minnesota. So when I started looking at this and success stories, right, and how this got carved out, because you're in a little bit of a maverick position here, right? You're forging a trail. So open networks are standard practice. Getting that way in the state of Utah, of all places. Utah has jumped on this train. When we get into bond issuing, and now, just like you, I'm not going to use quite the right words, okay, but you'll get where I'm going with it. When we get into things like that, the structure of them is important, and oftentimes has to be backed up by something, right? Because the network isn't producing money from the start, right? We have to put it in the ground first and hook it up before it starts producing revenue. So what we did is we found a woman, Laura Lewis Robertson and Young, out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and we will introduce you to her. She's the one who got Utopia through in Utah. It gets tricky, right? Because there's ratings for these. And who do you sell them to, and who's buying them, and what interest rate, and how are they structured, and it depends on population, and it depends on take rate. And she is absolutely the go-to person on things like this. So she has done it in California, Idaho, she's working in Texas, Utah. She's doing this nationally for open network systems, and that would be a meeting to set up. So we can do a deeper dive into this, and of course, I'll invite you and have that conversation.
And again, that's where we're at in the process. Is we've got a lot of deep questions. We can get you what we have, but to answer them to any degree of confidence, we need to go a little bit further down the road. That doesn't mean you're committing to building or doing anything. It just means we're gonna get bond folks involved, legal involved, IFPs involved, and we'll try to put this thing together a little bit later. So that there actually is something to follow, so that you have.
Earlier, we talked about how the telephone system started back in the 30s, 40s. And it's, my background was in rural electric, and I know how the rural electric kind of similar thing. There's a need out there, the density was so low that the investor-owned utilities could not afford to do it. So then you have the local co-ops, the local farmers joining the co-ops, and they drew government money through Federated. Now Federated also stepped up, if I'm not mistaken, to help finance television in the 40s and 50s. I expect it's still. Yeah. So for the government to follow through that, then of course, obviously, yeah, you need criteria in order to use their money. So I remember how that works. So I keep looking at this and saying, why is this? Why is internet different than telephone? Why is internet different than power generation before that? I don't understand why this is not being handled the same way.
If I may, the most significant difference is that those two utilities that you mentioned are regulated by the PUC. And broadband services are not regulated. Well, they want the government money without the regulation, right? Good thing that, yeah. I mean, yeah.
As that evolved also, I saw specifically with power through the cooperative. Back when you only had one customer per mile and a half, the investors really wanted to do with it. And all of a sudden, as the roads built, and all of a sudden now they're trying to preference power. Why are you getting this power off the dam? We should have this. So that's another thing. If I can take on another direction here. Again, back in the 80s, when I first got involved in this area, there was like 7 different phone companies in Pipestone County. So when we had the dig, we had to know who had what line where. That was before the whole one street was installed. And I never ever would have dreamed back in the 80s that we would have the situation we have today with telephone, where there's not a lot of landlines left out in the country that's there. Everybody's going to wireless. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I'm going down this train of thought is I still have that same reservation that we really want to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in infrastructure for something that could possibly be replaced with satellite. In my off days in the city, I know that the gold standard now is fiber. But is that going to be the gold standard 20 years from now?
No, that's a fair question. It is. You know, that same concern has been there for a lot of years. That wireless was going to take over, that satellite was going to take over. Satellite, look at his name.
Yeah.
Tesla, whatever.
Elon,
With the stars.
Yeah.
Starlink.
That has not performed as they have.
Yep.
You know, that's very much underperformed. You cannot get the bandwidth requirements. The bandwidth speeds through the satellite. It just doesn't work. I think satellite will have its place in certain areas where there is no other options, that type of thing. But I don't see satellite taking over what fiber can do. You have too many variables. You know,
It's maybe about waiting, if that would work someday, it is about, we're waiting 30 years for that to happen.
Yeah.
Or
and wireless is always going to be around, but you know, as far as you know, there's a lot of variables with wireless. You know, there's bandwidth issues there, and they talk 5G, all this, you know, new technology. True 5G is not probably going to ever come out in these rural areas. The problem with 5G, you need fiber you need fiber to every tower. You need the tower probably every quarter mile for a booster. 5G has enormous bandwidth, but it doesn't go very far. So it's really not a rural application.
Good.
Yeah, Commissioner, if I could just leave the council with one thing about the satellites and all that.
Right.
It comes to, a lot of this comes down to supply and demand. So when you have, and Starlink's a great example of that, because when the Ukraine war broke out, they redirected all the satellites over Ukraine, which made the subscribers in the US have a lot of sketchier service. Now they've launched more satellites since then and started to fill the gaps, but What that tells you is a huge example that anything that needs to be mobile and data connected, cruise ships, tanks, airlines, those people are gonna get the preferred access to those satellite systems, and that's where the bandwidth is going. So if you unloaded all of that market from the satellite system, you might be able to have a little bit more available for residential. But I suspect that wireline service is always going to be the most reliable, affordable way for people to go. Because the wireless systems are going to be taxed like that. Okay. So that's just food for thought.
And I said, I realized it was somewhat of an abstract concept, but I appreciate your indulgence in my.
Well, we knew that that was a question we had to ask before we even started the
Mhm.
business, so.
It is 11 o'clock. Where do we go from here? Do we have the tolerance to continue to discuss this at this point, or should we step back and evaluate what our people's thoughts are? And you got more comments to make? If you don't have more questions at this point.
George, any more insights on the bonding portion of this financing for the county? We pretty well covered that.
I think we covered that. I think certainly we can have additional conversations as we go forward.
What is our rating?
The county's got a really strong underlying bond rating of AA with Standard and Poor's.
They're gonna jeopardize that, are they, with this?
Well, for the counties that I've worked with, we haven't seen any adjustment to the negative side on, or following rather, the issuance of debt for the fiber project.
Thank you.
Could you just do like the fee of 29.9? Give me a quick, what that's including. What's that?
Yeah, so right. So every time during this meeting, right, that we say, okay, that's the point that we're at, though, right? That's the point that we're at. That's the point that we're at. When you vote to move this forward, right, there's a lot of numbers that need to get done, and a lot of conversations that need to get done. And this is a kind of thing that, I mean, he starts using words I don't know, right? And doing boils and take rates and numbers and percentages and playing with those, we get Laura Lewis involved on the other end, right? And start seeing what those bond rates look like. Right, so we can bring you more and more and more information to do that. So it's really, it's all of the technical deep dive into all of this stuff. And then also giving us permission to have contractual conversations with people and ISPs.
And that's, I guess that's bringing up the, can we move forward without, involving both hometown with the, paying the fee? Can we move forward? If we don't do that, are we kind of just sitting here and getting our way out?
Yeah, their headlights, we gotta make a decision, we gotta move forward one way or the other. Can't continue to hashes and hashes.
Well, and like I said, there are multiple check-in points. Right, so if you vote to move forward and do a deeper dive and push this project forward, there are multiple points where we meet again. And say, okay, now here are these numbers and this information, this is what this looks like. You have a decision.
We have those stop points built in that you can decide. It's like a pause. You just take a look and say, okay, here's where we're at. Here's the new information. Do we want to proceed forward with the next step? And we like that too, because everybody needs to have a level of comfort and know what's going on through it.
Mr. Chairman. And maybe Steve, you
Mhm.
might have to help me with this.
Sure.
I've been on board 2 months, so this, like, say this 29.9, is there money budgeted to move forward with what we're trying to do here? Would this be just general fund?
That'd be general fund, it would come out of reserves. Yeah.
And we got a couple.
And then actually we'd be looking at 2 points on this on page 5 and 6. So we'd be looking at Total cost of $42,890 for the grant applications and the technical representation. That would be our total, and they'd be getting 50% down if we pass the resolution that they had on the back page. As I understand this, this is looking to be an information I've heard from AMC, that this is possibly a good year for grant funding through the state and the feds. Is that, am I on the right path on this?
This is the year.
Well, yeah, it's
So if,
looking at.
so if we had a chance to get anything with the amount of surplus the state has, and we had a,
Big federal
maybe-
taxes that have already been
yeah,
approved.
maybe some of you listened to last week when we had Bree Mackey on the AMC conference, and she was talking about bonding. And I looked at our list, and we haven't had a bonding project for quite a number of years. It appears in that we've applied for, the county has, anyway. I'm sure Woodstock has over the years, but I don't see that we've done anything lately, or even in the last 2 years or 3 years. So think we're going to do anything, we should move forward with this phase of it. And one other question for the Hometown Fiber says assisting with bond sales or loans and legal. I think the county's, speaking out of term, we're very comfortable working with Northland Securities and George for this.
Yes.
And I think that we would like to, just saying, continue that relationship here and hope and not have to go out for other bonding agencies to do that. Is that, am I on the right track there when you're talking about the bond assistance?
Work that I was shown, George, are you working as the underwriter?
To be determined.
Yes,
Okay,
if the,
Okay.
right, if the county chose to do that, right?
okay, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think what we have done in Wilmer, and I've had multiple conversations with multiple agencies here in Minnesota. It's really important to get this part right.
Mhm.
Right? Because if we don't structure this right, if they don't get sold, if they don't, I mean, if that's a hard stop.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, and that's a hard stop for you. That's a hard stop for Hometown Fiber, right? We have to get this part, that's important. So, you know, that's a conversation that maybe George and I can have on how that works and what that looks like, and looking at past funds, and maybe talking with Laura Lewis. And she can represent the county, she can represent Hometown Fiber, she can co-write, but the way that we're looking at this with Wilmer and with the other financial institutions that I've spoken with, is just kind of having her come in and say, okay, this is what I know, right? This is where we went wrong. She said, write a book on it. These are the things we did right. Right. And this is how we're doing this moving forward. These are the rating agencies and what we've, run up into with them. But almost a coach through the first one or two of these until we have, firm ground on how to get these done. And with the best rates.
Yeah,
So George, is that basically the same thing you would do for us as well? Or Laura Lewis, a different
There's
part of this? Is this another?
And you can take, seems to be different roles in this.
Right, well, we've worked in both capacities, to be
Okay.
honest, with the county here, where we've been your underwriter, your investment bank, if you will, and also been your advisor and put bonds up for competitive bid. In a project like this, it lends itself a little bit more to having us in the role of banker, if you will, where you're sitting at the table and because ultimately we purchase the bonds and then we sell them to investors, and we have to understand it very well. And I don't want to, again, speak out of turn. When you talked earlier about kind of being a maverick, that's when you talk about issuing debt and being a maverick, sometimes that's maybe a little,
not what you sell in the bonds.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Makes it clench up a little bit.
Yeah, well, because when, and I know I'm taking extra time here,
No,
Jerry, but
nothing else.
when I reference recent counties, how they've done projects, it sounds different than that. And I'm a little familiar with the Utopia project because that was kind of a hot conversation, was that a decade ago or a little bit more. And so I wouldn't be completely comfortable in selling a revenue bond, not backed up by a general obligation pledge for Pipestone County. And even to go, and I know we're kind of getting kind of a little bit deeper into the weeds here of finance, but to even go a little further in protecting the general obligation pledge. That's what we try to work with in other counties where you get kind of agreements with the provider. And in a project like this, it's like, there's no initial provider. It's, you don't know who the providers will be necessarily. And maybe I'm out of turn there again, but
These
the,
are discussions. we're gonna do
yes,
that.
Right, yeah,
exactly.
right.
So not to muddy the waters, I think those are just questions I have looking in, and I know that I'm just coming into this conversation for the first time, so I apologize. You've probably had many meetings like this, but no, if you move ahead and we're at the table, certainly we'll help put together a project that's the most market acceptable and then also the best for the county, if you will. So it's kind of making sure both sides are satisfied.
I just, one comment, I just want to make sure, and I don't know if this is part of the next step, you know, what it's truly gonna cost. You know, I guess that's what it, you know, what it comes down to is what the project's gonna cost.
Mhm.
Because
need
like
to know
when
that.
when we just did our Slate project, that was $7,500 per passing, and I think in the paper it showed $3,100 per
Yeah.
passing. So, you know, lease payments could be double, or not lease
Mhm.
payment, but you know, your bond payments
Mhm.
could be double what you want. And that's a huge problem,
Mhm.
That's another check, right?
you know, so.
Good question, but are we gonna know what that is
Yes.
unless we move forward?
Yeah, so my big thing when you can't hide information without, right? We're being tricky about it. So full
Yeah.
transparency. You will have all of the information. I like to get it to you as soon as I have it. Okay, it's not, I mean, if there's a shift in numbers, if there's a change in interest rate, if there's, and there will be.
But you have not done it.
No.
You're not gonna do it unless we move forward.
Move forward.
Right. But at no point will you launch a network and we'll go surprise.
We talked about the city of Wyndham, now also the city of Wilmer recently signed on with them. Listen to the presentation. That was- But now, what did they do with their bonds? Did they go general obligation bonds on their?
So that's getting ironed out right now. If you went full general obligation bonds, like George here is talking about, I mean, those sell all day, every day, fully backed. I mean, that's a 100% go,
Mhm.
right? That's at your own comfort level. Wilmer is in discussion right now about how they're going to structure theirs in a revenue context and what that would be backed up with and how much of the network they need to back up. And so that's another thing that we learned from Ms. Lewis is that at the beginning of this, they had to back up 100% of what this project was, and now they're at about 33% when they're writing these. Right, because they have time now to prove that these are working and these are paying back the bonds, and no defaults.
George, are you familiar at all? Is Northland Securities involved
We-
there? Or maybe
We're not at the table with Wilmer at this point, but they haven't sold debt yet. I think their project is maybe just a little further along than you guys are. So they're maybe end of this year kind of timeline, I would expect. So certainly it's one of those where the industry that I'm in is kind of small, like if you will, where we'll know what's going on, or we'll be in talking to others involved in that project as well. Yeah.
But to move the ball forward, the first step is going to be us obligating to you to provide the technical, right? Yeah, and that dollar amount was
29 times, so 50% of that. Thanks.
plus 12, plus 12.
That's 50%.
For the grant
wrong.
Yeah.
That's
And once we commit to that, then if the project doesn't move any further forward, we get nothing for that money.
We've done all the exploration all the time for that, but yeah, that's where you're on.
So that's why, we're gonna have to be prepared in for penny and for pound here. Once we go, we gotta go.
Well, 48,000 is a lot.
If their numbers come back astronomical. We can-
Yeah.
I'm prepared to make a motion that we approve the resolution on the back. You want to number that one?
Yeah.
Second.
I'll second that. Hey, Kathy, you got that? So moved by Dallas, seconded by Doug. And we'll get the correct wording on that. Before we move forward. More quick. Just refreshment that because the city of Pipestone is underserved. So your proposal would be fiber in every house in the city.
Everyone it is underserved, but it is not eligible for grants.
For grants.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so that's like Wilmer.
Yeah.
right? In that same situation.
So that's where we're gonna have to use our bonding to pay up a portion, because the grant money's only gonna be for those areas that
And
are
it-
underserved at this point.
It might be one of those things where we start in the city. Right, because while we're doing grant preparation and we're waiting for that money to be appropriated, perhaps we're building in the city and that network starts ticking.
Yeah. To that point, I guess my question is, if we go with this proposal, in a sense, it's a feasibility study. Or I'm asking if it is. I mean,
We've already done the feasibility.
well, I mean, but by coming up with actual numbers and doing these surveys as far as how many people are interested. My concern is, like, say, you may have to do the city of Pipestone first, because when I look at the debt service schedule that we would potentially be obligating our county to, we can't afford to make that size payments unless there's a revenue stream.
There's, yes, and then there's.
So,
also
I mean,
the way that
unless,
these bonds are structured, they can put them out a couple of years.
Yes, and I think what I maybe very preliminary, just ran level that survey on that dollar amount. What you typically see, like indicated that you typically have like a ramp up period where you've got maybe 2 or 3 years with zero principal, and then it builds up there.
right, but that doesn't get me too excited, because to me, paying more interest is just a waste of money.
And also, George, we had a question too, that if we've got some cash reserves, how these bonds are set up, are we better off using some of our cash reserves, or are we better off bonding? So we'd have to make that decision too, what we best for the county.
Right, certainly a conversation we can have further. I think that depending on the type of bond, I guess that's yet to be determined, but there might be a reserve fund that you might establish or use that to, as kind of that rainy day fund for a bond issue. So there's a couple of purposes we can talk.
Let me go back to the Dallas motion now that Steve is here with exact numbers. So the motion states that. That page, that page.
Yeah, you have it there, Mr. Chairman. The resolution number will be 59-11-23. 59-11-23. You're welcome.
So made by Dallas, seconded by Doug. Further discussion. And I do want, if I may, Bill Folger, if I can put you on the spot here, our IT guy in the back, and you got anything to add before we take hold of this?
Let's build it.
IT guy. figured that. Anybody else? Any other comments here?
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess. Am I correct in assuming that if we do this, I mean, we're gonna find out whether our residents are interested, whether your company's interested, Woodstock, and whether we're interested, as are the three main things we're gonna find out. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of work
that's
to
the
get it pulled
information.
to the point where you guys can decide we're doing it.
Is
We're not there yet.
Is there a timeline? How long that takes? Your budget?
Yeah.
That information.
There's
A lot of
120.
this stuff runs through it, right? A lot of this stuff is running at the same time. Right, so I mean, the grant writing and the surveys, that needs to begin immediately. Right, we have to have time to design that and get it out, have time to have to get it back, count that, and that has to be done for the grants.
Your X funds, 2 months, 3 months.
We only have until the end of summer, beginning of fall, until those are, we need to hand them in, and be ready.
When you're talking grants, which grants are you talking about? The state grants or are you talking?
We don't know in the next issue of the grant.
Right.
And we want to be ready to go with them, because they usually give you a window that isn't enough.
Yeah.
right now.
Private, so-
Yeah, state grant.
That one will know the beat, that might be 2 years out yet. I don't know.
Yeah, so we want to get ready for
They,
that.
they dropped that in Iowa. They just dropped, the governor dropped a grant program that gives everybody less than 30 days. I mean, like, here's the program, get your stuff in now and don't get it.
There may be both state and federal grants available.
Yeah, well, that, that's the thing, we don't, we don't really know how those grants are gonna shake out or what their deadlines are gonna be, so we wanna be prepared for them, and that's one of the reasons why we added that in,
Right.
for this round.
And before we vote, I'm gonna ask the meeting as our county attorney, if you had a chance to read through this resolution.
I read through it.
Okay, any concerns at all?
A lot of whereases was pretty typical. Very end.
Oh.
That dollars, we're not sure authorized to.
Yep.
Company to do.
And again, for clarification, the dollar money at this point is a positive $21,025.
Mhm.
Okay, and then we're obligated then for the balance of that upon completion of work. Okay,
We can make it more informed decisions.
and again, I don't want to exclude or make any presumptions as far as where this works out with our Woodstock facilities as well too. So by entering into this is not going to exclude Woodstock from being involved.
In fact,
It's a major help.
It is.
Hearing no further questions, I'll call for the question. All in favor of the resolution? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Chairman.
It's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Oh, thank you.
And we will see you again when.
Well, we're hoping 3 months, we'll be done, and if we have to have a meeting in between, we'll.
Very good. And Alex, keep Steve up to.
Yep.
speed.
We'll be in almost constant.
Perfect.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your shares.
Thank you.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Move to second and third. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
11:24.
Our short meeting got a little longer.
No, I expected this was gonna go long, this is perfect.